Hey guys, I want to talk about improving the storytelling of your art in comic books. So I've got a little slideshow. Let's take a look and talk about what improves your sequential art. So telling a story through your art, what's really, really important is one word, clarity. We want to clearly tell the story, everything working in concert to make sure that your story makes sense to the viewer. That's what it's all about. So I'm going to borrow. Well, let me get there after looking at this joke. I can't make sense of this comic book. Shut up. I'm going to borrow from Scott McCloud. Scott McCloud, I think, has the best books on understanding comics and making comics. He has the best advice and has broken it down in a clear and easy to understand way that really makes sense. And when I first read his books, it really dawned on me, oh, this is why I love comic books so much and why that form of storytelling is so effective. So he breaks it down like this. For clarity in your work, you need to choose the right moment, choose the frame of that moment in your comic book panel, choose the image inside the frame, choose the words that go with it, and choose the reading flow of your story. And that is how you pace your artwork and tell that story in a meaningful way. I kind of think of it like a choose your own adventure novel. I don't know if they had those when you were growing up, but they did when I was. And it's a form of storytelling that required you to actually make some choices and then the story would progress. I saw an image map once of how that story was mapped out and how it was written. Must have been really crazy to develop these because you had so many choices to make. But it's really cool to think you can make the choice and then pace the story. And that's essentially what you're doing in comic books. You are allowing the viewer to set the pace of the story and discover what's happening. And so making it easier on them is what's going to make your art work. So, choice of moment, in other words, what to show and what not to show is really, really important. There's a whole section in Scott McCloud's book that explains this process. It's really important to think about the pacing of your story from frame to frame, from panel to panel. So sometimes you're doing it moment to moment in a very deliberate kind of staccato, slow action way, or you're thinking action to action, large swings of the story, subject to subject, kind of back and forth like a dialogue, scene to scene, kind of skipping ahead and moving the story at a faster pace, aspect to aspect, kind of giving the look and feel of the environment and the feeling of the story, and then finally non sequitur, which doesn't make sense. Frank Miller, I think, is a great example of that moment to moment and action to action type storytelling. And his Dark Knight, I think, is one of the best examples of that, where you see Batman coming down in this action pose, and then these little moment to moment staccato points of these newscasters, and then back to the action and the type and everything. It works great. I love it. It's beautiful. Something that doesn't do that very well is famously Avengers 200, which was not a great example of storytelling in that way. The panels were boring, the action was disjointed, and the story was a little bit hard to follow. And the storyline itself was kind of passable. And so it has a bad reputation as one of those comics that nobody likes. So choosing those moments, what to depict. Now, what frame, what camera angle, what shot are you going to take on that image, on that part of the story to really tell it well? So that frame is like our view. It's our picture to the window of the story. Here's that Frank Miller style again, but this time not so great. So Frank did a follow-up to The Dark Knight, and it came out much later than The Dark Knight. And frankly, when I tried to read it, I could not make sense of the story at all. The framing was weird, the pacing was weird. What's in the camera shot is weird and hard to follow, and so it just felt wrong. So I did not like it at all and thought it was a bad example of storytelling. So I found it very interesting that he went from such a beautiful style to then this, which was so disjointed. On the other hand, his own Sin City work is really amazing and minimalistic. And the camera angles are really interesting and dynamic. And so what he chose to put in the frames in the Sin City panels is crazy good. So I don't know what happened with that Dark Knight. He really phoned it in. All right. So not only are you framing up your picture, choosing your moments, now we got to actually talk about the image itself. What are you showing? What are you emphasizing? What does it look like? So, from your rendering style to the objects and stylized symbols that you're putting in the art, that's what matters. That's the image that you're showing. And so be careful about those choices. Oh yeah, gotta love Rob Liefeld. So, how do you like that? Um, this was that fateful like Heroes Reborn. I can't remember what the series was called at the time, but boy, that Captain America, he's got a chest that can go on forever. Um, but the style of art, the style of image was way over the top. Really jumped the shark with Rob Liefeld in the middle 90s. On the other hand, his contemporary, his compadre, Jim Lee, uh, is one of the best ever. And his ability to compose a picture, show the detail, show the information is second to none. Just an incredible draftsman. I love his art style. I love the drama of his pictures, what they tell, what they show, what he decides to show, how he shows it, the angles. It's gorgeous. Plus, the detail is beautiful, down to the illustration of the fingers and everything coming at you. Love it so much. Okay, let's talk about the choice of word, how to decide what words go with your pictures, how to arrange them, the special effects words, those things that really make your story pop. So, this is where you kind of have that tug of war between the artist and the writer. If you're the same person, even better because you can decide what to edit. But if you're working with a writer, sometimes you've got to bend to their vision. If it's the artist's primary job, then the writer kind of fills in the gaps. But in this case, you can very clearly see the tug of war between Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, where Stan Lee is filling in the dialogue and filling in the narration over the top of Jack Kirby's art. And this is definitely an example of too much text. But Stan Lee wanted to write a novel. Comic books are not novels, right? It's more about the pictures. And to today's eyes, to our eyes, I think a lot of us gloss over the text. I think we move right to the pictures. On the other hand, look at this one, Dave Mazzucchelli, and I believe Frank Miller was the writer, maybe. On year one, Batman year one, beautiful storytelling. Um, Love it so much. The art was beautiful, the angles, what was chosen to draw, perfect. But then the text kind of fits in and fills in the gaps. They're not competing for attention. They fit together well. I love how the sound of the gunfire, breaks the frame and is part of that. And then the little speech balloons or staccato around the characters just to fill in the feeling of the action scene. Plus, in the beginning, that dialogue there, that little narration is part of Bruce's head, and so it's illustrated in a unique way. So you get the idea that it's him thinking, and it's not some other character. So the way the text and the words go with this complement the story. They don't fight for attention. Love that. Now, the final one here is choice of flow. How do you actually read your book? Now, this changes whether you're doing Western or, Eastern comics or manga, right? Your reading order, your page layout matters. Typically, I work in a left to right, top down reading order. That doesn't work for everybody. Here's an example of a page that has no reading order. Another one of those Infinite Crisis splash pages. What's bad about it is it's busy and confusing, and I can understand why. They wanted to show the assortment of all the characters that are in it. But it's too much. It's too much to watch, too much to read, too much to see. Can't really tell what's going on. Can't really tell who's winning or what's happening. They're just battling. But then the other problem is the perspective is off. I mean, characters that are supposed to be closer to us are drawn smaller, and characters that are further away are drawn larger. There's this whole scale issue going on that really doesn't work. So the legibility and the reading order is confusing. Whereas if you look at an old classic like this one, spoiler alert, Gwen Stacy doesn't make it out of this comic. Um, you know how to read it. Left, top down, side to side. And the way it emphasized the story, yes, it looks a little bit old-fashioned compared to the modern splash page, but it's still clear and it's still impactful and it's still beautiful in the way it's classic comic book storytelling. So pay attention to the flow. And another thing, the page turn. What do you put on one page? What do you put behind the other to emphasize the story, to play the story point? Sometimes that helps. When you're working in web comics or something that's open-ended, it doesn't really matter. But when you're working in book form, it does. It matters a lot. And you'll entertain your readers more. They have that payoff when they turn a page and they get to that next result, that punchline, that story beat that really matters and is important. So there you have it. Those are some of my tips on clarity and how to get back to your story and finish off what you've been doing with your comics. So as you plan out your pages and you think about what your story is going to say and what it's going to be, remember, be clear. Use those tools at your disposal to make it clear for your audience, and they'll thank you for it. All right, see you around.